In Ireland, single mother Sarah moves to the countryside with her young son, Chris, hoping to build a new life. As they drive toward their new home, Sarah nearly hits someone standing in the middle of the road. She checks on Chris first to make sure he's okay, then gets out to see if a stranger is hurt. The woman turns out to be an elderly lady named Noreen, who keeps muttering the eerie phrase, "He's not my son." She ignores Sarah's questions and instead stares directly at Chris in a way that deeply unsettles Sarah. Unnerved by the strange encounter, Sarah picks up her car's broken side mirror and drives off with Chris. Life as a single mom isn't easy, and though Sarah and Chris have their share of small arguments, like over his picky eating, their bond is strong. Sarah often reassures him with hugs and tells him she loves him. They even have a fun little game where they make silly faces to cheer each other up. One afternoon during lunch, Chris screams when he sees a spider in the kitchen. Sarah catches it and gently sets it free outside, but Chris gets upset, afraid it will return. Frustrated, he says his dad would have killed it, then questions why his dad didn't come with them. Sarah, caught off guard, only says it's complicated. This angers Chris even more. He stomps on the spider, calls Sarah a liar, and runs into the woods. Worried, Sarah chases after him. The wind grows stronger as she goes deeper into the forest until she comes across something startling, a massive sinkhole in the ground. Before she can decide what to make of it, Chris suddenly reappears behind her, apologizing for bringing up his dad and making her upset. Sarah embraces him and quickly leads him away, not wanting him to see the hole. That night, Sarah hears the back door creak. She checks on it and makes sure to lock it before heading to bed. Chris starts attending a new school, but fitting in proves difficult for him. When a flyer goes around for an upcoming school talent show, Sarah encourages him to join. It could be a great way to make friends, but Chris isn't so sure. Later, Sarah goes to a dinner party with some new friends, including her boss, Louise. While swapping odd local stories, she hears more about Noreen. Everyone in town thinks she's insane. Years ago, Noreen stormed into her son's classroom in a frenzy, shouting wildly. It took 3 teachers to restrain her and get her out. The child had been transferred to another school, and Noreen was committed to a mental institution. But when she was released months later, she ran over her son with her car. No one knows for sure whether it was an accident or something intentional. That night, Sarah finds herself unable to sleep. Every creak in the house and the constant gusts of wind keep her on edge. Suddenly, she hears a loud bang from a door, and panic sets in. She hurries to check on Chris, only to find his bed empty and no sign of him anywhere in the house. Terrified, Sarah runs downstairs and sees the back door wide open. Grabbing a flashlight, she rushes out into the night to look for him. The forest is pitch black and unsettling, and Sarah doesn't make it far. Strange sounds echo through the trees, and her fear overwhelms her. She bolts back to the house and, shaking, picks up the phone to call the police. But before she can say anything, she turns around and finds Chris standing calmly at his bedroom door, claiming he's been there the whole time. The next day, Sarah visits a doctor. He gently asks if she has a history of anxiety and takes a look at the scar on her forehead, which came from an accident a year ago. He suspects stress and prescribes her some sedatives to take before bed. Back home, Sarah is rattled again when Chris suddenly appears in the kitchen just a second after she called for him. She tries to brush it off, convincing herself it must be her nerves, and decides to start taking the medication. The next morning, Sarah wakes up to find Chris holding a bouquet of wildflowers he picked outside. She scolds him gently for wandering off, then softens and accepts the flowers with a hug. When she picks him up from school later that day, she's surprised to see he's made new friends, including one of the boys who used to tease him. On their way home, they run into Noreen again, standing right in the middle of the road. Chris and Noreen lock eyes, neither one blinking or looking away. Sarah honks the horn, but Noreen doesn't move. Stepping out of the car, Sarah approaches and hears her muttering again. This time, it's not your boy. Before Sarah can respond, Noreen's husband Des shows up and apologizes for not keeping better watch over her. While he talks, Noreen suddenly darts to the passenger side of the car and starts pounding on the window, screaming, "It's not your son." She even starts slamming her own head into the glass, trying to break it. Sarah quickly jumps into the driver's seat and speeds away as Des tries to hold his wife back, though Noreen continues to thrash and scream. The following morning, while driving Chris to school, Sarah decides to stop by Noreen's house. But when she gets there, she finds a horrifying sight. Noreen is dead, lying face down in the dirt with her head buried in the ground. Later on, when the police arrive at Sarah's house to take her statement, she watches as one of the officers casually distracts Chris by arm wrestling with him. For a brief, chilling moment, Sarah thinks she sees Chris use an unnatural amount of strength, so much that he breaks the officer's wrist. But she quickly snaps out of it, realizing it was only in her imagination. After the police leave, Sarah steps into the shower and notices something strange. The scar on her forehead has begun to bleed again, even though there's no clear reason for it. The next day at work, her boss Louise immediately brings up the news of Noreen's death. Not wanting to dwell on it, Sarah changes the subject and admits she sometimes looks at Chris and feels like she doesn't recognize him. Louise, a mother of twins, assures her that it's normal. Kids change fast, and it can take time to adjust to those changes. Later, Sarah attends Noreen's funeral, held inside the woman's home. She finds it unsettling. Every room has multiple mirrors hanging on the walls, but today, they've all been covered in dark fabric. While there, Des shares a quiet drink with Sarah. She decides to ask him directly why Noreen insisted that Chris wasn't her son. Des explains that, not long after their own son's 8th birthday, Noreen began to notice strange shifts in the boy's behavior. She became convinced that he wasn't their child anymore. But it hadn't been Noreen who killed the boy. It was Des himself, in an accident, because he hadn't seen the child on the driveway. In the days that follow, Sarah tries to return to a sense of normalcy. While jogging through the woods, she finds Chris' favorite action figure on the ground and becomes uneasy. She walks to the edge of the sinkhole, and as she nears it, she can hear faint, unintelligible whispering coming from the darkness below. Later at home during lunch, Sarah is caught off guard when Chris eagerly eats a dish he's always hated. This small moment confirms her growing suspicion. She confronts him about the toy she found in the woods, but Chris insists he hasn't left the house. Sarah shows him the action figure and keeps pressing for the truth until he suddenly loses his temper and pushes the entire table toward her with surprising force. Immediately, he seems to regret it. He quietly apologizes and retreats to his room. That night, strange sounds echo from behind Chris' door. Sarah cautiously approaches and peers in through the keyhole and then through the gap beneath the door. And what she sees leaves her frozen. Chris is crawling around on all fours like an animal. He traps a spider on the floor and casually eats it. Terrified, Sarah backs away and runs to her bedroom. When Chris knocks on her door a few moments later, she masks her fear and tells him goodnight, pretending everything is fine. The next day, she takes him to the doctor. During the exam, nothing seems physically wrong. In private, Sarah expresses her concerns about his behavior, but the doctor redirects the conversation to her, specifically her mental health. He wonders if her scar may have come from something more traumatic, possibly from Chris' father. After the appointment, Sarah becomes more determined to find out the truth. She buys a small video camera and discreetly hides it inside a hole in Chris' bedroom wall, setting it up to record everything that happens when she's not around. That night, Sarah decides to skip her sedatives. By morning, Chris is once again devouring huge portions of food. Hoping to smooth things over, Sarah apologizes for acting strangely lately. Chris responds in a deeply unsettling way. He reaches out and presses his fingers into the scar on her forehead, forcing them in as though trying to pry it open. Sarah jolts awake. Thankfully, it was only a nightmare. That afternoon, she attends the school talent show. Chris's class performs a choral piece about a hole in the bog. Partway through, the lights seem to dim, and everyone else in the auditorium fades away. Sarah suddenly finds herself alone on stage with Chris, who now recites the song's lyrics in a cold, flat voice. Panicked, she bolts from the stage, but every exit she tries is locked. Louise catches up and asks what's wrong. Sarah blurts out, "He's not my son." Just then, Chris appears with his teacher. Sarah flees once more, this time finding a door and sprinting home. Back at the house, she retrieves the hidden video camera and watches the footage. What she sees shocks her. Needing another opinion, she takes the recording to Des. He welcomes her in and explains that Noreen covered every room with mirrors because she believed only mirrors show the truth, and she needed constant proof her husband was still himself. Sarah plays the footage and insists the same thing that happened to Des' son is happening to Chris. Des refuses to accept it. He angrily hurls the camera to the floor, smashing it. though he stops short of calling Sarah crazy. Sarah hurries home to salvage the SD card. Chris is waiting and complains that she left him alone. She claims she only stepped out because she felt ill. He seems mollified and gives her a hug. During dinner, it's revealed Sarah has been secretly mixing her prescribed sedatives into Chris's food. Chris, yet again, gulps down a meal he used to loathe. Afterward, Sarah suggests they play their favorite funny face game, but Chris doesn't know what she's talking about. She stares at him and states flatly, "You're not my son." At that, the thing wearing Chris's face lets out a low growl and lunges, violently slamming her around the kitchen until she goes limp. Moments later, Sarah regains consciousness as the creature drags her through the yard, intent on burying her head in the earth, just like Noreen. Fortunately, the sedatives finally take effect, and the creature collapses before it can bury Sarah completely. She's able to dig herself out and escape. Dragging the unconscious imposter with her, she brings it back to the house and locks it in the basement. Once there, she grabs the broken side view mirror to inspect the thing's face. And what she sees confirms her worst fears. Its features are twisted, vague, and not fully human. Suddenly, the creature wakes and lunges at her again. Even with its unnatural strength, it's still in the body of a child, so Sarah manages to push it away. As it lets out a horrible screech, Sarah slams the basement door shut and locks it. Now that she's safe, at least for the moment, her priority becomes finding the real Chris. She grabs a flashlight and runs straight to the forest. Without hesitation, she approaches the massive sinkhole and allows herself to be pulled down. After tumbling through the earth, she lands deep inside a network of underground tunnels. The space is claustrophobic, but she crawls forward until she finds a larger cavern. And lying there among piles of bones is the real Chris, unconscious but breathing. Before she can leave, she realizes they're not alone. Faceless, shape-shifting creatures begin to stir and move toward her. She pulls Chris along as she crawls back through the tight tunnel. One of the shapeshifters manages to grab her wrist, starting to mimic her face, but she bashes it with the flashlight until it lets go. She keeps going, pushing through panic and exhaustion, until they finally reach the surface. Once outside, Chris starts to stir, and Sarah confirms he's alive when he opens his eyes. She rushes with him back to the house, aiming for the car, but the doors are locked. Leaving Chris beside the vehicle, she dashes inside to get the keys. That's when she hears it, the creature in the basement mimicking Chris's voice, calling out to her. Sarah knows what she has to do. She takes the keys and sets the house on fire, leaving the imposter behind as she drives away with her son. Weeks later, Sarah and Chris are living a peaceful new life in the city. Sarah keeps a close eye on him, constantly snapping photos to check his face, and their apartment is covered wall-to-wall in mirrors, just to be sure.